Morality. Defined by the Oxford Dictionary as principles concerning the distinction between right and wrong and good and bad behavior, sounds wonderfully simple on paper. Unlike stories and movies that portray characters to be protagonists, antagonists, or more commonly anti-heroes nowadays, these dichotomies of embodiment of good and bad do not exist in our real world, as much as we would all like them to. Instead, we live in a world where the line between commendable and reprehensible is no longer clear, but a foggy pathway. What was once considered right is now fiercely challenged, and what was condemned is defined as liberation. Today, the moral compass no longer points in the same direction for everyone, which is why I stand here to speak about the spectrum of morality. Take the thought experiment, the transplant surgeon problem. You are a surgeon and are presented with 5 dying patients needing organs and a healthy patient whose organs could save them. The question is, would you allow that one patient to die so that the others may live? Philosophers such as John Stuart Mill would argue that sacrificing that one person is the morally right praxis, simply due to the math that 5 is greater than 1. However, philosophers like Immanuel Kant would state that killing that fit patient would still hold you responsible for that one death, regardless of the good that it may produce. Some say numbers matter, some say principles matter, and many say it depends on who the person is. A friend or a stranger, innocent or guilty, suddenly ethical certainty is no longer absolute. This leads us to a much larger debate. Moral relativism versus moral universalism. Friedrich Nietzsche argued that traditional moral rectitude is a social construct. It is created by those who hold power and is passed down as unquestioned norms. This is known as moral relativism, where our morality is a product of our culture, our upbringing, and our circumstances. For example, some societies see loyalty to family as the highest moral duty, even if it means bending the universal law. Others believe that justice must come before personal friendships. The same act can be seen as moral or immoral depending on where you stand. Moral universalism, on the other hand, is the belief that some moral truths are held everywhere, regardless of perspective. For instance, operating on the healthy patient in the transplant surgeon problem is wrong because it intentionally kills someone, which violates a rule that should apply to everyone. John Rawls strengthens this argument through his thought experiment, The Veil of Ignorance. This experiment tasked individuals to design society's principles of justice without knowing their own place in it, such as their social status, their wealth, and even their gender. In doing so, Rawls reinforces moral universalism by stripping away individuals' perspectives and privileges, forcing rules to become universal by design, no longer relative to culture, status, or circumstance. Constructed rules are meant to apply to everyone precisely because they advantage no one in particular. Now, this entire time, I've been discussing theoretics and philosophical ideologies. What does this mean for us today? It means that ethical challenges have no single answer. Let's take, for instance, seeking asylum. Some believe that offering refuge is a moral duty rooted in universal human rights. Others believe that moral responsibility lies within protecting one's own community, showing the clash between universalism and relativism. Or how about a more common example? Climate-conscious consumerism. Buying sustainable products may feel universally moral to one person, while another sees a price tag and says morality is asking for way too much. However, the complexity goes beyond philosophy. Psychology shows us that morality can shift depending on the situation, even within the same person. The bystander effect shows us that the more people there are, the less likely anyone is to help. Not because they are heartless, but because their virtues in practice become fragile when shared. Imagine seeing a person collapse in a crowded mall. You would think more people would mean more help, but studies show the very opposite. In a crowded area, people freeze, look around, and wait for someone smarter, braver, or more qualified to step forward. This shows us that moral principles do not necessarily guarantee moral action. If responsibility is not assigned, even the simplest right thing becomes complicated. Now, most people believe they're moral, so the question is, why do some people commit immoral endeavors? Usually, It's not because they reject morality, but it's because they reinterpret it. It's bent to fit their mindset. A person may begin to see their actions as necessary, unavoidable, or harmless. They justify, they're affected by pressure, or it's a shift in their perception. The act remains wrong, but no longer feels so in the mind of the actor. Psychology calls this moral disengagement. People rationalize. They say things like, it's not that deep, everyone does it, or I had no choice. It's important to understand that immoral actions do not come from malice or cruelty. Authority, group pressure, or the belief that the act serves a greater purpose can all make the behavior feel more justified. Over the past 5 minutes, I've established that morality is contingent. But it's not entirely because of our perception or our upbringing. Instead, it's because of a psychological term known as moral licensing. This is the idea that we are permitted to do something bad followed by a good action. The key factor in this is that we perceive our proceedings to be ethically justified. It's best to interpret moral licensing as a form of moral capital or an honor system. When we do something considered good, such as donating to charity, we gain some moral capital, which we can spend by being rude to someone. What makes moral licensing uncomfortable is that it doesn't come from having bad intentions. It shows us that ethical evaluations are not always immediate and absolute. They're about maintaining a narrative to protect our self-image. As long as we can convince ourselves that we are moral, overall, our actions feel negotiable. Eventually, this leads to us performing deeds that are not only socially commendable, but for ourselves to be seen as good by those around us. This is a well-known term known as virtue signaling. Our actions become performative for the sake of maintaining and upholding our reputation publicly, socially, and digitally, ultimately creating a facade of our persona. We've seen this pan out numerous times when celebrated public figures known for their supposed moral stances are later exposed to have acted in ways that directly contradict the values they promoted. Just think, and I'm sure you can come up with a few examples, especially in the music industry. In the end, it doesn't matter how many rules there are. It doesn't matter how we perceive situations, and it certainly does not matter on a figurative currency that amounts to nothing. For we will continuously justify, reinterpret, and balance our actions until they fit the version of ourselves that we want to believe in. The question is no longer what is right and what is wrong, but how we decide what right and wrong even means. Thank you.